welcome to the Ryan Max Show. Back for another episode this week. Finally figured out the audio, I think, so we'll be off and running. There's a lot to get to. What a mess of news this week. Uh, Tucker interviews Putin. Biden has a press conference after a special counsel report comes out. Uh, didn't have any charges, uh, so that'll be interesting to see go forward. What they do, but politically damaging, yeah, I think so. Legally, you can't indict a sitting president. Also, Trump wins twice in Nevada, once in a primary and the other in a caucus. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit, what that means. Uh, but what a mess this week. A lot to get to. Probably won't get to a whole lot of it today, but more over the course of the next week. So let's get into it. All right. So Trump wins twice this week in Nevada. First as a primary, and then as a caucus on Thursday. If you don't already know, the Democrats who were in charge of Nevada previously tried to make it a point that we have a primary only in the state of Nevada. Didn't really work out that well. A judge rejected the idea of having only a primary contest. They decided that they can have a primary contest in the state, but also keep the caucus uh, as well for the GOP. So the GOP can do both, run a primary, run a caucus, except the fact that if you run the primary, you can't run the caucus. It's exactly what happened. Trump spent a lot of time in Nevada. He wanted to win Nevada, and he did outright by a lot. Nikki didn't spend a dime in Nevada and lost both political contests by a lot. The primary, she lost 62 to 37 percentages of the vote. The primary contest in which Trump was not on the ballot, candidates for who wanted Trump voted none of the candidates. She got beat by none of the candidates, 62%. And then when the caucus came out Thursday, he won that by about 95% of the vote. So she loses twice in Nevada. Now, the February contest coming up, primary is coming up in South Carolina, her home state. Remains to be seen how she's going to do there, but polls are always indicating that she's going to lose that by 30 points as well. Is she going to drop out anytime soon? We don't know. So, aside from that, that was the big political news this week for the election. Trump wins Nevada and he wins the Virgin Islands. I think he gets some of those delegates there. And the primary has no delegates allowed to capture. The caucus takes all the winner of the vote. So Trump's ahead again. Something else happened this week. If you missed it, Tucker Carlson went over and interviewed Vladimir Putin. The left calls him treasonous. They hate him for it. They said at least one of two of the panel members on some of the other shows said he should be tried and legally held accountable. There's nothing illegal about what he's doing. He's on his own network. He's on his own. It's freedom of speech. As a journalist, you have that right to go across the globe and interview whoever you want. He came out in a statement before his interview saying that, yes, I'm going to interview Vladimir Putin. You don't have to take everything he says, but I want you to hear what he says, and if you agree with what he says, you can take it. If not, then don't take it. But that's where he stands as a journalist. That's what journalism is. I'm going to go into the details and play some highlights of his interview next week. But there's so much other stuff to get to. But the key point there, takeaway, is the left, when their so-called journalists interview Vladimir Putin and ask him softball questions and hardball questions, they're touted as heroes, and we're going to save democracy by asking them, why did you invade? Tucker asked to invade as well, why he invaded, and he went on a 20-minute spiel about what his historical motive is for reacquiring land in Ukraine. So that's neither here nor there. But when conservatives or when actual journalists go make an interview public, they're not allowed. But when it's CNN, MSNBC, and CSNBC and whoever, totally okay. So more on that next week. But there's something on that I think is important too. The special counsel this week, appointed by Trump, as a Trump appointee, investigated Joe Biden on the classified documents misuse. Now, whether you think he did have a legal case in which he should have been charged, should have been indicted, is one thing. As you know, he's not going to be indicted as a sitting president. We've already known that there's precedent against that, and there's legal. You have to go through Congress, and they have to impeach him. And there's a whole other process in which you have to go through and remove a president sitting. However, I do think, and I agree with Dan Bongino this week when he came out and made a rant about it. Robert Hur is not stupid. He knows he's not going to get an actual criminal charge brought forth from the Garland DOJ. So, knowing this, he comes out and tells everybody the truth anyway in the report. Is it okay to have documents classified in your garage? No. Is it okay as a vice president to have any classified documents? No, because the vice president has no authority to hold classified documents and hold any documents at all. Trump is the only president is the only authoritator of classified information. He can declassify any information he wants. Trump had his information in a locked door in Mar-a-Lago, full access to whoever needed to have it at any time throughout those years that he was gone. So what they do? They investigate him anyway, and they beat down his door, saying that he lied, he didn't have access, and they took pictures of all the scattered about documents in Mar-a-Lago. They placed the documents on the floor and then took pictures of it. He's not a unorderly type of guy. He's very organized. He's run a major conglomerate of a real estate organization for almost 50 years. He's not going to just leave things all over the floor in his room or in his residence. However, when you have a cokehead son living in your house periodically and coming in and out of your garage, and you've got war documents, you've got secret classified documents unopened, unaccounted for in your garage in boxes, FedEx boxes, Amazon boxes, that's a problem. That's a national security problem. What does the DOJ do? He turned them in. What's the difference? Trump had access and gave everybody access in a locked, secure place in his residence. Biden still might have documents somewhere in China that's got his name on it. Every week they came across a pair of documents that they found in boxes. Joe Biden has no idea where he's got documents, where he's been with the documents. He had him at the University of Penn office there. He has them in his garage. He's got him in Wilmington, Delaware, in his home there. He has no idea where he's been across his vice presidency. He doesn't remember being vice president. The two-tier justice system, regardless, is still there. But you have to remember, no one is going to charge a sitting U.S. president with a crime. Now, when he's out of the presidency, if they want to go after him for something else related, fine. But I do think Special Counsel Robert Hur is not stupid. I think he did really well with his report. It comes out and he says, well, he's not held liable. He's not going to press charges because he's a poor, elderly, old man with a very terrible memory. He doesn't remember anything. And that's almost more damaging than having a legal charge against you of having unclassified documents. Being elderly and poor memory, that you don't even know where these documents came from. You don't know where they are. You don't know where they were. That speaks volume as it is. But Joe Biden has probably the worst day of his life, as political as he can, in response to these documents, this report. He gets the report, his team gets the report, and he's like, why is that? Why? This is terrible. I have, I don't know, maybe 10 clips during his press conference, which was, if you've seen it, it was a disaster. He couldn't remember anything. When he got mad about something he disagreed with, he yelled back at the reporters. The man is gone mentally. Whether you like him or not as an individual, he's gone. And at one point during the press conference, he makes a mistake when he says he's fine, and then mistakes the president of Egypt as the president of Mexico. Mexico is now near the Gaza Strip in Israel, but mentally he's okay. Okay. Let's not forget that. So here's the clip that I was telling you about just now. I'll play some more down as we get to it. But mentally he's fine. But okay. Here he is, confusing Egyptian president.
As you know, initially, the president of Mexico, Sisi, did not want to open up the gate to allow humanitarian material to get in. I talked to him. I convinced him to open the gate. I talked to Bibi to open the gate on the Israeli side.
I needed to look at a map. I was pretty sure Mexico was connected to the U.S. border, not the Israeli border. So he confuses Egypt with Mexico. Makes sense. He also doesn't take any blame whatsoever. Every time that Joe Biden has an accountability issue, he blames everybody else. And this document situation is no different. Here he is taking full responsibility for not watching his staff move his documents. Because Joe Biden didn't have the documents, his staff moved them, and now he's going to take it out on his staff, and he's probably going to berate them in a closed-door meeting. Here he is, taking zero blame once again, because Joe Biden never does.
You take responsibility for at least being careless with classified material.
I take responsibility for not having seen exactly what my staff was doing. It goes in and points out things that appeared in my garage, things that came out of my home, things that were moved not by me, but my staff.
So it's his staff's fault. Noted. The guy can't tell the truth. He can't take responsibility. The inflation was Donald Trump's fault, even though Trump left office at 2.4% or 1.4, I think 1.4%. And it skyrocketed to at least 10 or more under Biden's first year. Putin's high tax, high price war, that inflation, that was Putin's fault. It wasn't Bidenomics. Nope. No, he never takes blame. Why should he? He's going to get away with it. He's got lefty media all over him. It's an absolute joke. And it's getting worse. This is as worse as it gets for him today. So not only can he not remember the president of Egypt, I can't remember talking to him, talks to the president of Mexico. He thinks his memory is really well because he remembers to call on Peter Doocy. Doocy asks the question, is your memory that bad?
President Biden, something the Special Counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's
How
totally
bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. That's
Do you feel your memory has gotten worse?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak. So apparently Doocy's not allowed to speak. I have no words. His memory is bad. He cannot remember anything basic from tying a shoe to remembering what chocolate flavor ice cream he had. Can't take blame. He makes bad jokes about his memory. He's done a lot for the country. He's put us back on ground zero for sure. Everything's A-okay in the economy. But now he gets angry. Okay. Not only does he get upset that he didn't do anything legally, his memory is fine. He doesn't remember, who he talked to about the humanitarian aid. But when you ask him, did you share classified information, which is in the report, by the way, he gets really mad and yells and shows his dementia when he yells at the reporter and says, I did not share classified information. I did not have sexual relationship with that woman. Kind of seems to know.
not share classified information. I did not share it.
With your ghostwriter.
With my ghostwriter, I did not. Guarantee you did not.
But the special counsel said in the
no,
report
he
that he
did not say that.
Okay.
He did not say that.
But Mr. President, one of the...
Let me answer your question. The fact of the matter is, what I didn't want repeated, I didn't want him to know, and I didn't read it to him, was I had written a long memorandum to President Obama why we should not be in Afghanistan. And I was of this multiple pages. And so what I was referring to, I said classified. I should have said should be private because it was a contact between the president and the vice president as to what was going on. That's what he was referring to. It was not classified information in that document.
So it wasn't classified. It was just a private conversation. Got it. Robert Hur didn't say that in the report. It was classified information. He's going to investigate you for classified information that you weren't supposed to have. But go ahead and keep telling us you don't have any classified information. It was supposed to be a private conversation, Joe, with Obama. Great. But you know this is going nowhere legally, but politically this is going to be down the toilet. This is going to drop his approval rating even more. It's going to display the fact that we all know if he can't remember being vice president, how in the hell is he going to be president? His memory is this bad. We know he's elderly. We know he's falling down flights of stairs. We know he has to use the short stairs going up the plane. We know he kind of gets up and does a shimmy shake when he goes up the stairs and tries to act cool and vigorous. The guy is 80 years old, but he's about a 100-year-old, 80-year-old man. Does that make sense? He shouldn't be president. But my mental state is fine. Just fine. Robert Hur is smart on this. He knows legally he's not going to have anything done about this, but he plays the middle finger right to the hands of the DOJ. Not going to investigate, not going to press charges. I'll tell the truth anyway. Biden's too old for being president. Thank you. It is amazing that they continue to roll out there this guy and basically boast that he's fine. The special counsel's report was nothing to see here. It was totally fine. But the press is not going to stop. They're not going to stop him from hammering him. This is his only press conference of the year, of the last 3 years, live. He can't take any answers that isn't scripted right in front of his face. But nonetheless, here he is. He's going to get mad at the press because they call him old and incapable of doing the job.
For months when you were asked about your age, you would respond with the words, "Watch me." Many American people have been watching, and they have expressed concerns about your age.
That is your judgment. That is your judgment. That is not the judgment of the press.
They expressed concerns about your mental acuity. They say that you are too old. Mr. President, in December, you told me that you believe there are many other Democrats who could defeat Donald Trump. So why does it have to be you now? What is your answer to that question?
Because I'm the most qualified person in this country to be president of the United States and finish the job I started.
He's the most qualified. He's the most qualified to beat Trump at this time. But it's only February. Who knows? It could be somebody else by the time we get to November. He's the only one qualified to beat Trump. Did he beat Trump in 2020? I don't think so. All right, so aside from Biden getting mad and the leftist media and others, you can read them on Twitter. You can go through them and find them on your own. You can find out how many people it's like, well, this was terrible. The special counsel report is that he's not qualified. He's not a doctor. He's just a lawyer. He shouldn't tell them how mentally incompetent they are. Do the eyeball test. He is falling down on his face everywhere he goes. He is not fit to be president. Someone needs to tell Mamala to pull the plug on the 25th Amendment. Get the cabinet together, pull the plug, and send him into early retirement. He shouldn't be. I almost feel bad for his family, but he shouldn't be here. But that's not going to stop his number 2 in line from acting so upset at the special counsel report. Here she is blabbing her mouth on CNN how angry she is about it.
The way that the president's demeanor in that report was characterized could not be more wrong on the facts and clearly politically motivated.
That's MSNBC, not CNN. Anyway, clearly not, was politically motivated. So if a Democrat special counsel came out and said, I can't charge you because the DOJ is not going to fulfill those charges because you can't indict a sitting president. If they come out and a Democrat said, you know what, Joe, you're too old to run. He can't remember anything while he was vice president. This is the way it is. I want the American people to know. They probably wouldn't have a big deal, but because it's a Republican special counsel lawyer, they have to throw a fit and call it political attacks. It's nothing political. The man is old and senile and he shouldn't be the president. But that's where we're at. All right. I know I keep hammering in this last few episodes, but you need to get the information. And I know that It seems redundant, but we had more issues with the border this week. And no, yes, we still have the same issue. People coming over, flooding the gate, whatever. They're flooding the gates. But I know most of you are aware we've had this. We've had this bill that came out. The Senate reveals 4 months in hiding in a dark room. They come out and say, we've got a bipartisan agreement. We've got it. The Republicans wrote it. One Republican wrote it, co-sponsored it. He's not really conservative. I liked him a lot in the beginning. But any Republican right now that calls for allowing 5,000 people in a day at the cap and then start shutting down the border, not a conservative. The number should be zero. Zero illegal people should be coming into this country. Is it going to happen? Probably not. You're going to have people coming over, but it should not be to the tune of 3 million people a year. That's the number where it is now. It'll never cross zero, but you can get it to a manageable level, like maybe 100,000 a year. I'd take that again, because that was at least a third of what Trump's numbers were. He didn't even break 1 million during all 4 years. Each year combined, he was less than 1 million. Trump's worst year, 859,000. Biden's worst year, still to be continued. It's about 3 million right now as of 2023 a year. It kept going up. Trump's first year, I think it was like 100,000, and then it came up 200,000, 400,000, and then it got to 859, one of them. But Biden was just escalating from there. I'll see your 859, I raise it 3 million. But you'd think, so bipartisan in nature, what does that mean to you? Throw hands. Yep. Bipartisan in nature means that you have at least 60 senators. You got to get 10 of the other side. Okay, bipartisan, you have majority of Republicans and hold on, there's good sidetracked there. There we go. Microphone. Okay. Oklahoma Chimbacan. Thank you, sir. Yeah, classified as a to match your clip audio. Yeah. All right. So got off track there for a minute. I was reading comments. One of my fans checking in and telling me to bump up audio. How's that now? Is that better now? I got a little bit louder. I fixed it earlier this week, but maybe it's not still loud enough. Okay. So they got this bill, and bipartisan in nature. Okay, when somebody says, "Well, we got a bipartisan bill," that means both sides working together. Okay, you got Republicans, Democrats coming together, making a bill that's better for the country, right? Not the way it's done over the last probably, I don't know, maybe 100 years. It hasn't been that way. It has been the case of if one Republican or one Democrat signs on to the other side's bill, that's the bill. Bipartisan. Okay, so amid the border disaster, we want the border to close. We want a bill with security in it for the border. Stop the border. Stop the influx of migrants coming over, okay? I can't imagine anything worse than what came out this week by the Senate. Here it is from the Blaze. You've got a $118 billion emergency national security bill, $60 billion of it going to Ukraine. 20 billion going for the southern border. 118, half of it going to Ukraine. So after 4 months of negotiations, senators unveil this massive package, the 370-page bill. It offers $60 billion to support Ukraine in its war with Russia, $20 billion for U.S. border security, $14 billion in security assistance to Israel, and $10 billion in humanitarian assistance for civilians caught in conflict zones in Gaza, West Bank, and Ukraine. So $10 billion just because we're nice, even though we're in a war, we're going to go ahead and give them aid while we're shooting at them. Makes sense? It never gets better. More money, solving more problems, right? Okay, so $4.83 billion to key regional partners in the Indo-Pacific region to deter government aggression. So in a national emergency security bill, we have $4 billion go to Taiwan so that China doesn't attack them. Got it. $2 billion for Ukrainians and other refugees displaced. What? Why? Why are we giving $2 billion for people getting out of the war-torn zones? Why? I don't understand. I don't understand. Oh, another $400 million for the nonprofit security grant program to help nonprofits and places of worship make security enhancements. So $400 million for nonprofits. Got it. Okay. So ABC News reported that the deal would require the Department of Homeland Security to nearly shut down the border if migrant crossings increased above 5,000 per day. So did you hear that? 5,000 crossings per day is their limit, and then they'll shut it down. How about none? Or if the daily average encounters reach 4,000 a day threshold in a 1 week span. This doesn't stop Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat, from coming out and saying, yeah, the border never closes in this bill. At least he's being honest, because it's never going to close if he passed this bill. Quote, the requirement for president to funnel asylum claims to the land ports of entry when more than 5,000 people a day, Murphy wrote on an X post, the border never closes, but claims must be processed at the ports. This allows for a more orderly and humane asylum processing system. I can't think of anything more than inhumane than letting them sleep in tents in LA, or letting them sleep in an airport in Chicago, or letting them sleep in a high school in New York. That is more humane. I can think of a great humane idea. Send them back to their countries where they belong, when they have actual houses and they can have their own home countries care for them. That would be the most humane thing to do. You don't let them cross over dirty, muddy, infested water in the river in Texas and then get knifed by cartel members for not having enough money to coming over and giving their children, and then get cut by razor wire because National Guard decides, hey, we got to secure our border. I can't think of anything more inhumane than letting them come through and get gutted like a fish to climb over the border. Close the border. Send them back to their home countries. You wouldn't have this problem being inhumane. Another Democrat, chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, stated the bill, as Ukraine runs low on ammunition to fend off Putin's brutal invasion, it is imperative that we finally extend our support. We must also live up to our commitments to our allies around the globe and quickly get more aid to innocent civilians caught in conflict, including Gaza, where the humanitarian crisis is especially dire. I never believed we should link policy demands to emergency aid for our allies, but Republicans insisted. Policy demands? There's no policy demands. That's our border. Why are we making a policy demand for our own border? I would understand if the opposite were true. If you were making a case for giving aid to Gaza and we were already putting $100 billion at the border, then you could say, I'm going to make a political demand here, and I'm going to make a policy demand that with this U.S. security border bill, I want also aid for Israel. That's what the demand should be. That is a policy demand. When this comes out as a national emergency border bill, but only $20 billion goes to the border, that's what the problem is. That's not a policy demand. That's what your job is as a United States congressman or woman. Your job is America first. That's your policy demand. You demand more for the border than you do Israel. Israel's an ally, but they're one of the most wealthiest countries in the Middle East. They can fend for themselves. And Ukraine has none of our interests, aside from the elites in Washington that have money rolled up in Ukraine. Then it's their interest, not our interest, not the American people's interest. Our best interest is to leave us alone and close our borders. And stop trying to make everything your policy demand. The co-sponsor of the bill, though, he's got miscommunications. He says This border security bill will put a huge number of new law enforcement tools in the hands of future administrations and push the current administration to finally stop the illegal flow. The bill provides funding to build the wall, increase technology at the border, and add more detention beds, more agents, and more deportation flights. The border security bill ends the abuse of parole on our southwest border, and that has waved in over 1 million people. It dramatically changes our ambiguous asylum laws by conducting fast screenings at a higher standard of evidence, limited appeals, and fast deportation. We know that the parole system at the border is a joke, but that's not one way to alleviate it by letting in 5,000 people. Sorry, Senator Langford, not on board. Among the other co-sponsors of the bill, the lovely Chuck Schumer. The Senate's bipartisan agreement is a monumental step towards strengthening America's national security abroad and along our borders. This is one of the most necessary and important pieces of legislation Congress has put forth in years to ensure America's future prosperity and security. Senator Turtle, Mitch McConnell, praised the bill for providing direct, immediate solutions to the border at our own southern border. No, it doesn't. America's sovereignty is tested by the well here at home, and our credibility is being tested by emboldened adversaries around the world. McConnell said on Sunday, the challenges we face will not resolve themselves, nor will our adversaries wait for America to muster the resolve to meet them. Okay. The Senate must carefully consider the opportunity to what's in front of us and prepare to act. Okay, Cocaine Mitch. No, the Senate's not going to act, and I want all the Republicans to stand up to this a-hole because he's not on board with conservative policy here. Joe Biden strongly supports the proposal. Anytime you have Chuck Schumer, Joe Biden, and McConnell strongly supporting a bill, you should probably call your representatives and senators and say, veto this bill, do not vote for this bill. When you have those three idiots strongly supporting a bill, that means it's going to be a stupid bill and going to cost you more money. It's the strongest reform in decades, Joe Biden says. Is it though? So thankfully, because some of the measures in Congress have to meet the 60 threshold in order to pass, aside from certain judicial roles of nominations, you have to have 51 as a simple majority to get judicial nominations through. That was the Harry Reid rule when he was in the Senate. They nuked that out of the way, and now, but most majority of the bills, you have to get that 60% threshold. Not even come close. We had like 15 Republicans finally step up and say, "No, Mitch, we're not doing this." So this was Senator Mike Lee's take. His take. Mike Lee is a strong conservative. He knows the Constitution. He knows judicial, and he's very good with the legal matters there. He's got a very good take on what the so-called border bill was. So Senator Lee releases the Dirty Dozen disasters in the so-called border bill. So if passed, this is what it was going to do. Codify, catch, and release. This would have given the Secretary of Homeland Security unchecked authority to release an alien into the United States under ineffective alternatives to detention. It was going to allow 1.8 million illegal aliens to enter before temporarily closing parts of the border. Again, the 5,000 a day threshold. The Secretary may shut down the border if crossings are 4,000 above 4,000 daily for a 7 consecutive day period. There's a loophole there that says does not count any unaccompanied alien children, non-contiguous countries, and suspected trafficking victims, aliens who are determined exempted from decisions on ICE, or aliens who have been screening for criteria related to asylum. So allows the reopening of the border once encounters are at the 75% threshold. So it allows border hopping once it goes down below the 5,000, and it doesn't count unaccompanied children, doesn't count trafficking victims, it doesn't count those for going for asylum. So what are we who are we counting then? Another loophole, limited duration, limits the number of days each year when the authority to shut the border down to 270 days. So 270 days, the border will only be shut down. Got it. It leaves presidential discretion, so allows the president to reopen the border anytime it's a national interest to temporarily suspend the border emergency authority for up to 45 days. So it's presidential discretion. In this case, it'll never be closed. 3, it funds sanctuary cities and NGOs sending illegals around the country. Again, includes $1.4 billion for FEMA grants to provide shelter, transportation, legal advice, and other services to illegal aliens, and $2.3 billion for HHS refugee entrance and assistance. A slush fund for services to unaccompanied alien children. I can't think of anything worse. I don't understand. Subsidizes free taxpayer-funded legal counsel to alien refugees. So now we get to pay for their legal counsel. That's nice. It expands parole instead of limiting it. Yep, does nothing to limit it. Increases green cards by 50,000 per year for 5 years. This includes 32,000 family-based green cards and 18,000 employment-based green cards. A work permit for adult children of H-1B visa holders. Immediate work permits for every illegal released from custody after they pass an initial screening. So immediate work permits. I can't think of a greater idea. Nothing to deport illegals. He's right. This does not require anybody to deport them at all. Afghan Adjustment Act creates a pathway to citizenship for over 60,000 poorly vetted Afghans who were brought to the country due to President Biden's disastrous withdrawal. It weakens the asylum screening by codifying a Biden policy. And the last one, no immediate funding for the wall. The bill claims to give $650 million for building the border wall. This is a budgeting gimmick without any new money. The bill would simply rescind current money and then put it back in a later date so that President Biden and Mayorkas don't have to build any wall and can delay spending on the wall. So you see, once again, when you dig into what was in this Senate bill, it's a disaster. It's absolutely a disaster, and I don't know why anybody would ever thought to go all in on it. It's amazing. All right, so that was the Blaze article on that. The Senate bill was stopped, is not going on, but they did pass supplemental bills going to Israel, about $95 billion. That has to also pass the House. So standalone bills can still pass, but no border wall, no border funding. Republicans shouldn't pass any of these standalone bills either until they get concrete border laws and bills in place. That's it. So, but that doesn't stop Newsweek from commenting, because Newsweek is always great about commenting. They're great at political stuff. They should just stick to kids' articles. Conservatives have attacked a provision of the new border bill that would only allow legal challenges to be made in Washington, D.C. The bill would strip the power of Texas and other states to challenge some of its provisions in a local federal court. Conservative commentators were quick to denounce the provision bill and contained on page 221 of the bill. Bill Shipley was a federal prosecutor of 20 years, decried that this would prevent plaintiffs like the state of Texas from filing suit in Texas federal courts. This is corrupt. After outlining the provisions under which immigrants could seek judicial review of a deportation, the bill states the United States District Court of Columbia shall have sole and original jurisdiction to hear challenges. Now, to give you an illustration of what that means, the bill that would have been passed by the Senate and then the House and goes back to the Senate for review and then the president signs it, that would have allowed jurisdiction for illegals crossing Texas to only have judicial review in the District of Columbia. Why? Because Washington wants to be the arbiter of all things legal matters for the country. They don't want jurisdiction to be in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Louisiana, Florida. They don't want those cases to be tried in those federal courts there because they might get a bad turn and have to actually deport these illegals from our country. Nope. They want them in D.C. courts. Why? Because the judges won't prosecute. They won't send them back. They won't allow any kind of deterrent to come into the country. They'll be let go, no asylum dates, and they'll get all the benefits of not being here. It's great. That's why D.C. is the biggest asshole of a town that's running this country. They want all the power and all the legal authority to decide whatever they want to do coming to the country. That's why this bill was never to be passed. And it came to light. Texas would have been stripped of their judicial review. It's atrocious. There's really no answers anymore. Washington is the cause of all of our problems. And the uniparty is also a major cause. You have to start electing more conservative people and principle first. You can't elect people just because their hair looks good. You can't elect people because they smell good. You can't elect people because they promise things and then they don't deliver. Party is dead. You elect principle first, and then you decide on policy. Policy over people. That's how you win elections. Stop re-electing Lindsey Graham. Stop re-electing Mitt Romney. Stop re-electing people who've been there for 50 years, Mitch McConnell, that don't do anything but suck up your money in a vacuum and then blow it out your ass later on. That's what they do. They eat your money. They spend it on their own priorities. They don't give it to the American people's priorities. They have no priorities to help the American people besides themselves. The more you understand that, the better off you'll be. I can't. All right. That's the border stuff. We went over the special counsel mess of a report. One more issue that came up this week, and then I'll get to something that's read across as an opinion. It was really good. I think you guys need to hear it because it's right out of the heart of somebody that I think you guys will recognize. But first, Supreme Court this week took up oral arguments, not made a final review of it, but took up oral arguments on the ballot case in which Colorado and several other states have decided that Trump committed an insurrection. He should be off the ballot. No. People decide elections, not the state. So they're hearing oral arguments this week, and I gotta say, I don't have any clips yet. I'll get them together and I'll get them, in a minute. But they've got Justice Jackson, who is the leftist of Supreme Court justices, actually doing a fair job of asking questions to the Colorado attorney, and to the tune of, you have to commit an insurrection in order to be charged with an insurrection, in order to use the Section 3 in this article of Amendment 14. You can't just go, he's an insurrectionist without any conviction. So that's first and foremost. And I thought she did a really good job explaining that, and he had no answer. He's an insurrectionist, and it's an insurrection. We should take him off the ballot. No, it's not what happened. Also, the officer clause that had confused everybody on the Colorado State team brings up the word officer. You cannot be an officer in the United States if you've been convicted of an insurrection. It was such a vague term, and the founders put this in. An officer was not a president. The president was above this article of the Constitution, this amendment. The 14th Amendment was for Confederate officers that held jobs in the government at the Confederate level. They could not run for federal office as they were part of the insurrection. And so that's where the founders got it right. They left president out of that agreement because a president, by nature, they thought or felt at the time that wasn't going to be a thing of insurrection. But the only insurrection in our country has happened was Andrew Jackson's insurrection against South Carolina, which basically started off the Civil War. Not, anyway. But that's here and there. So the arguments were that he's an insurrectionist and should be off the ballot. No. So the first day of our oral arguments suggests that this is going to be blown up and he's going to be on the ballot, which the Secretary of State already kept him on the ballot after being hot-headed and railroaded over the decision. She just won't count the votes. She probably just won't count the votes. That's what's going to happen. Oh, he can be on the ballot, but I'll just throw him over here. I won't count him. It's fine. But I thought Justice Kavanaugh, like him or love him, as his decisions recently in some of his cases, he was very pointed here, and this is coming from the Federalist. So, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh hinted during oral arguments on Thursday that Colorado Democrats' decision to remove President Trump from the 2024 ballot is anti-democratic, noting that it disenfranchises voters. I can't think of anything worse for democracy than removing a president you don't like from the ballot simply because you don't like him. Orange man bad, remove him. But that's democracy. That's democracy in action. Two people vying for your vote. The winner gets to be president. The ones wanting to keep democracy are the ones blowing it up by removing him off the ballot. Justice Kavanaugh goes on. The Supreme Court ruled in 2023 to bar Trump from the ballot. So this is the state Supreme Court. Over accusations that he incited insurrection. First of all, it was a couple hundred people who decided to get a little weird and break some windows and do some illegal things. Those few hundred people should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. That's a riot. That's not an insurrection. Also, a presidential speech beforehand is not an incitement when he says peacefully and patriotically voice to make your voice heard. That does not say, go break windows and kick ass. That's not what he said. That's not an incitement of violence. You have to actually call for violence. Kind of like the lefties in charge when they were in charge of Congress. They were calling for Supreme Court justices to literally be executed. I'm just saying there's a difference between incitement and making a speech calling your patriots and calling them peacefully assemble. And then when they told them when it was happening, hey, go home. We know this isn't us. We are a law and order party. Go home, be peaceful, don't be a part of their narrative. What'd they do? Oh, no, they stayed. A few hundred. That's a riot, not an insurrection. So he asked, what about the idea that we should just think about democracy? Think about the right of the people to elect candidates of their choice by letting the people decide. Murray spent most of Thursday morning, this was the prosecutor of the state, arguing that Colorado had a right to disqualify Trump under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. However, Kavanaugh told him it's the Centennial State's position, not the 2021 Capitol chaos, that has the effect of disenfranchising voters to a significant degree. Should that be something? Does that come in when we think about when we read Section 3 this way or read it that way? What about the background and principle, if you agree, of democracy? Kavanaugh continues. Murray sidestepped Kavanaugh's question and repeated his claims that all constitutional safeguards was designed to protect our democracy. He replies stupidly, the framers of Section 3 knew from painful experience that those who violently broke their oaths to the Constitution couldn't be trusted to hold power again. And because they could dismantle our constitutional democracy. Hold on. We are not a constitutional democracy. We are a constitutional republic. We have a Republican form of government. The sooner these idiots get it through their head, the better off it'll be. We are a republic, not a democracy. Democracy is majority rule. That's mob rule. We have democratic principles in our government, such as elections and representation. We are not a democracy. Democracies lead to authoritarianism. That happens. And so they created democratic safety valve. As Trump's lawyer, Jonathan Mitchell, explained to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson earlier in the day, the events of the Capitol did not qualify as an insurrection as the term is used in Section 3, therefore could not be used to bar Trump from the ballot. And she goes on to quote here, so your point is that chaotic effort to overthrow the government is not an insurrection. And he says, we didn't concede that, and it's an effort to overthrow it either. This is a riot, it was not an insurrection. So it wasn't an insurrection. And at the end of this, I really think that's going to come down to the fact that you can't bar a president from the Constitution, from the ballot, for simply not liking him. That's what this whole is. Democrats hate them. They hate you. They hate what you stand for, and they think Trump is the way to get through you by kicking him off the ballot. They want to remove your right to choose. Wait, where have I heard that before? They want to remove your right to choose, but they're pro-choice, right? Got them. They want to remove your right to choose on the ballot, and that's taking away democracy. So remains to be seen what we have on the ballot there. And I believe that the Supreme Court can't trust them right now because of everything going on. I don't think that they're upholding the Constitution at times. I think that they're going along with their own agenda, despite it being a 6-3 standing. I think that Amy and, of course, the rhino on the court, Chief Justice, is about as left swinging as they get. They, at least Roberts, doesn't want to appear to be too right wing, so he will buck a couple opinions one way or the other, depending on the case, to make it appear that he's more centrist than he is. All right, so to wrap up, I thought I would share with you an opinion piece by none other than Glenn Beck. You know him, you love him. This is on the Blaze website. He writes an opinion piece. He does these from time to time, obviously. He's got a good piece, and it was really heartfelt, and I think that y'all should hear it. It relates to today because I think with the topics we were talking about and democracy being removed and fascism is what Democrats speak about. That's what's important. If you are on the side of freedom, you can't be a fascist. Who is in league with the big business and big tech? Who is pushing for censorship? Who suppresses the oppressed? Who suppresses the opposition? Not the American right, that's for sure. Fascist has been the left's label of choice to silence their political opponents on the right. When people hear fascists, they think of concentration camps, as they should. That is the way fascism usually ends. You must get rid of your political opponents. Unless you're a free state, you can't have people who disagree with you. That's the first definition of freedom, being able to speak your mind. We made sure that it was the first expression of freedom protected in our Bill of Rights. Freedom is antithetical to fascism. Real fascists snuff out through suggestion, then intimidation, and then camps. If there is ever fascism in our country, he says, it's coming from the left. This idea that Hitler was a right-wing fascist Nazi and he was far right, no. Hitler was anything but far right. He was a socialist, Nazi socialist. That's what Nazis stood for, socialist. They were actually leftists. And fascists are always a leftist ideology. They're for less freedom, for less speech, less opportunity to be your own will. That's what they say. They want total control of you. That's what fascism is. So when you hear anybody in the leftist media say, "You're a fascist right-wing idiot," examples, proof, they have none. They call Hitler right-wing fascist. They're lying because it's not true. It's never been true. Fascism is in the form of leftist policies. He goes on, being called a fascist is a grave pronouncement indeed, one that should not be given lightly. Yet leftists will use it profusely whenever they want to silence their political opponents. But let me ask you this. Who are the true fascists? Which side of the political aisle is on the side of freedom? Which is fighting actively against it? Here's the dictionary definition of fascism. A political philosophy, movement, or regime that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader. Severe economic and social regimentation and forcible suppression of the opposition. Gee, I can't think of anything that's happening right now in accordance to this definition. Can you? Let's take a look at the first part of the definition. Okay, this is what he goes on and breaks down. Exalts nation and often race above the individual. Do Republicans do that? Conservatives put race over people? No. Democrats do. Progressives do. We have a communications leader in the White House. Her only decree of importance is that she's black and a lesbian. We have a vice president. Her only degree of importance is that she's a black woman. It's leftists that are the fascists. They put race over people. So he goes on, tell me, who's elevating race above the individual right now? I dare you to tell me with a straight face it's on the right. Yeah, I just explained. Every single person on the left is constantly telling us their skin color is the most important thing about you, that it defines your entire life. Your skin color tells you whether you're oppressed or not, and whether you're a good person or not. Yet we're the fascist. Weird. How about the second part of the definition? He says, which side of the political aisle stands for a centralized autocratic government? The forcible suppression of opposition. Which party is about to lose its candidate from being on the ballot at all? So those claiming that when Trump gets to office, he's going to be a dictator. Those claiming that when Trump returns to office, he's going to be a fascist leader, and he's going to put his political opponents in jail, and he's going to cramp down on your rights and your freedoms. Democrats always accuse those of they themselves are doing. Who's putting their political opponent in jail right now? Democrats. Who's trying to remove freedoms from all the American documents? Democrats. Second Amendment, gone. First Amendment, gone. Censorship, right there. All Democrat-run policies. Weird. Fascism. What about the part of the definition that talks about economic regimentation? Which party is pushing for public-private partnerships that are the actual mechanics for fascism? In this framework, unlike under communism, they're even allowed private businesses, unless you disagree with the state. If you do, they'll intimidate you and eventually make it impossible for your business to operate. That's how public-private partnerships work. Who's pushing for those? Democrats. If there's fascism in our country, it's coming from the left. It's so obvious that it's no wonder why they need to target the right with nationalism. When we say we're proud to be Americans, it's not at the expense of the individual. In fact, we defend the individual that we say we're proud to be Americans. The Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights are all about the individual and his natural-born freedoms. Collectivism, Glenn says, on the other hand, is the goal of fascism. It is always antithetical to freedom. That means if you're on the side of freedom, you can't be a fascist. We are not fascists. The people imposing collective salvation are coming from the left. They are the ones willing to sacrifice individual freedom for the sake of warped vision of collectivist dystopia. They are the true fascists. Everything they're accusing us of, they're doing. Yeah, he's right. They say we're religious zealots who force our religion on children in schools. Yet they are the zealots who impose their woke religion on our children and will be excommunicated if you don't comply with the high priest. They demand that you stick to the dogma. We, on the other hand, call for school choice so that the individual parents can choose what type of education suits their children the best. They say the right is in bed with big business. That used to be a thing. Name the corporation that stands by the right and waves that flag. Name a business that won't get penalized for promoting conservative values. They are the ones who are in bed with public-private partnerships, ESG, medical monopolies, big tech, entertainment, and every other industry. They say we don't care about immigrants. Yet under their policies, immigrants are being raped, trafficked, sold as slaves in the drug cartels. All the while, cartels are profiting the billions of dollars from our open borders. And we are the ones who don't care about immigrants. That's absolutely on point. We don't care about immigrants. But under the Democrat policies, just continue to make them worse. Okay. They say we don't care about the poor. Los Angeles, a good example for caring the poor. How about San Francisco? What happened there? Tent city? Crapping in the streets? What is happening in those cities is disgraceful, Glenn says. They say we want chaos in the streets. Remember Chaz in Seattle? How about they chose Antifa rot on our streets? How about that? Chaos. The leftist politicians who gave these alleged anti-fascists a free pass were the ones who were trying to get rid of all the police in their cities. But we're the ones who want chaos in the streets. They say we don't care about our national security. Yet they're the ones who have enabled 10 million people to come across our border. In that same breath, they have the audacity to call us terrorists while bankrolling Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. Here's the last one. They say we're Nazis. They compare our campaign to stop taxpayer funding of sexually explicit books in our schools to Nazi book burnings. We're Nazis because we don't want our kids to read sexually explicit books in schools. Got it. On Monday, U.S. Representative Jim Jordan revealed the House subpoena of Amazon, highlighting the Biden's administration's efforts to address propaganda and misinformation in books for the online retailer. For the Biden administration, letting Americans read books that aren't approved by the political narrative is unacceptable. They're not allowed to read conservative books on Amazon. That's what the Biden administration wants. So who is the one censoring? Who's the one burning books? Who's the one silencing their political opponents? Who's the one pushing for collectivism? Who are the real fascists? Everything leftists are accusing you of, they really are. Thought that was a good piece. You can get that on The Blaze. That was by Glenn Beck, and he's got a lot of that to say on his programs as well. You have to remember, Democrats will always accuse you of they themselves what they're doing. Just the way it is. All right. That's going to wrap up today. I've gone about an hour. Oklahoma, I don't know if you're still on here or not, but if the audio is back fixed, let me know. I thought it sounded louder earlier when I tested it, but it could be off again. Who knows? I thought it's been much louder. I changed into a setting on there in my interface, but all right. So after all that news today, all this catch up of a busy week, I got you caught up. So next week, I hope is a little bit less of stressful week putting things together and finding the right topics to go through. Now, if you missed the live stream, I go live once a week, usually roughly on the weekend, sometimes a little bit during the week, depending on my schedule. I like to keep it as consistent as possible, but sometimes I can't, but it's generally once a week. I might try more, maybe like twice a week, if I can, to get more regular content out there so I don't have to kind of scramble to put a whole giant glob of information out there. So that's still in progress. But if you can't get the live streams and don't catch up on them, you can always go to YouTube and watch them afterwards. Rumble, they're on Rumble. They will be there. I'm live on using Rumble Studio. So this is my first time using it, first actual live doing it. I tested the other night. And so it's actually really easy, and I like using it. I know the audio is, I guess, still an issue, but let me know if you can't hear it as loud as my other streams on StreamYard is, and I'll try to correct and see what it is. All right, so if you can't get the live streams, you can catch the audio versions on podcasts, on Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever, or I have a website. This saves you if you have an iPhone, you can go to Apple, Google, whatever, Apple, iTunes, whatever. But if you want everything in one place and you can just branch out to those links separately, you can go to the website, RyanMaxShow.com. And on there is links to the podcast. Each new episode is up there. And there's also links to Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube, Rumble. Everything that where I am found is on that website. So one click right above me, RyanMaxShow.com. You can get all that information there. I'm going to post my sponsorship information on there. If anybody has small businesses or just businesses in general that want to support the show any way possible to continue to bring content to you, feel free to reach out to me, and I will gladly pair up with you and have you join my sponsorship. So among future things, I'm going to try to maybe add, if there's a liking for it, maybe some merchandise. Maybe people like Stanley Cups. Maybe I'll add those Stanley Cups, so those basic white women come tracking to my website to buy me a cup instead. So merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, or you could buy a fleece blanket. That's fine too, from 50 Shades of Fleece. That's a shout out there in case you didn't catch that. So that's where you can find me, RyanMaxShow.com. I'll be on live next week, bringing you more stuff. See you guys.